Thanks, Madhav, for the introduction, to Abhinav for this wonderful event. And that's, well, I'm sure it's okay. So the title of my presentation, I was asked to kind of submit this about 2 weeks before the actual presentation itself, and I got a number of emails on this, including messages from Abhinav saying that I hadn't done it. So I finally just put in a placeholder. I called the presentation a placeholder, so that's the name, but now I actually think that there is a logic behind what I've put together. Firstly, I don't have the hubris to believe that I have anything substantial to say about photography. But at the same time, the practitioner in me actually just says that go on, kind of show all the projects the way that the easiest way that is possible. But the shadow of the academic within wanted me to dwell a little bit on the idea of the photograph and the image. And what I'm going to speak about essentially is about the production of the image. Yesterday, Dayanita and Martin spoke about how the image of a project is also very closely connected to the consumption of the public imagination of that project is. And I think the problem with that also is the fact that in that kind of cycle of consumption, the image, the project gets flattened into a singularity many a time. And what's also interesting to see is with the kind of advancement of technology and the fact that now everyone's a photographer thanks to camera phones and so on and so forth, we now have the ability to also produce prolifically this kind of this imagery of what constitutes a project. And it's not just the final image, it's also the kind of steps that you take in producing the project itself. And so today I'm going to speak about projects, not so much the final image of the projects, but the steps that one takes in the process of building these projects, and sometimes these projects being inhabited post that kind of evocative image that one manages to capture. Which, for instance, in this case is a Shiva Temple that Edmund shot for me about 4 or 5 years ago. And really, it's a kind of defining image of the project. But what you also don't see in this is the additions, and this is something that that you see now, that there are additions that are made to the temple that actually have manifested over time, and which in some sense also add this layer of growing with time. And again, this is shot by me when I visited the temple again. It's not Edmund's picture, but what this kind of proliferation of technology and this ability to kind of to produce many images does is it also allows you the facility of documenting these little changes in your project over time. This is again a very old project. It's my first architectural project actually, in addition to a small hotel in Manali. And what the kind of composition of the roof and the balcony was something that was really kind of interesting for me to kind of get absolutely right. But what you also see here in a much more recent image is the fact that nature in some sense also takes over the project, and I think that makes the project a lot more richer. And again, the kind of ability to articulate this imagination of the project over time is something that the photograph now allows us to do. Or for that matter, this project where of course it's the object that's really kind of standing out here, where the building actually has this kind of corbelling structure that allows it to take the weight of the stone lintels that span each floor. And the entire kind of project was done by these master craftsmen, let's say, bricklayers who worked on this. But what was also interesting and what is not captured in that final image of the project is the fact that the design process also warrants the manufacturing of a tool to actually do that. And I think that's as kind of evocative, as kind of defining of the project as the actual object itself. And this is a much more kind of recent project. This is something that we've just installed at the JKK, the Jawahar Kala Kendra in Jaipur at Charles Correa's building. It's a part of the Venice Space exhibition curated by Rupali and Prasad. And here, when working in the Spathic gallery, we were actually working with the idea, as you can see in the bottom rightmost drawing, we were working with how we could actually reintroduce the idea of the square within that circular gallery within Korea's 9 squares. And that form really is a kind of resultant of that. So what you actually see here is a really kind of slick, in some sense, manifestation of an object that's hugely complex. But again, what doesn't get articulated or doesn't get articulated in the final image of that is the actual dexterity and the ability of a tailor from Jaipur to be able to stitch this and manifest that project in just one day. So that's really something that allows us to document things like that. Another small project that we are currently finishing, it's a library where the idea of the brick becoming, the brick landscape actually becoming the architecture as well is something that we were trying to capture in this, and how we actually looked at the interior space, and this is of course a rendering, the interior space as being one that's inhabited by shelving for books and so on and so forth. But the eventual image at some point also in some sense doesn't manage to capture the actual the imagination of what that space has potential to be. And so whether this carries through in the actual fitted out, this is of course a picture of it very recently that's with its shuttering taken out. So it's a pure compression vault built out of brick. And the power of the image is something that one wonders whether it will actually manifest in the final fitted out library with the vault. So this image then becomes really important for us and also instructive in ways to develop this idea in the future. In this rendering of a project that we were building in Bangalore, it's a house where the entire structure of the house is pure infrastructure, really. It's just a series of structural columns and pipes that take the water and sewage in and out. And the actual house itself are small inserts within the envelope of that pure infrastructure. What doesn't get captured again, and which is something that is the kind of dexterity of detail that allows for that supposedly simple house to actually manifest in its many compositions, as I indicated earlier. Or for that matter, in this project that we installed early last year at the State of Architecture exhibition in the Rotunda at the NGMA, where we had this entire wall, reactive wall, responsive wall that actually moved in and out based on people's movement in front of it. So if you stood in front of the wall actually came at you, like you can see there. And what is interesting also was the fact that this was built out of paper. It was supposedly the largest origami project in the country. And the kind of experience of the entire space was highly kind of evocative because of this. But what you also don't kind of see is the amount of love that one has actually for that entire project, as you can see that boy kind of hugging the installation. And also the fact that post the entire exhibition, the entire thing is carted away, taken out, recycled, and you know, kind of it goes back to being maybe an origami project in some kid's school. This is a part of our housing research where we actually looked at you know, images of affordable housing types that have existed in the city of Mumbai, and how it is very easy to imagine these spaces as being nothing more than just extensions that one does sporadically over time. But when you actually support the image with drawings, like we did in this project, where you actually can see that the entire edition is really a very sophistication articulation of space, material, expansion needs, and so on and so forth. And then when you start layering the idea of the drawing with the image, it then starts telling you the story. For instance, here, where these two little red additions that you see are actually toilets and kitchens that have been added to an existing single-room unit, and how that addition is really a very, very articulated and sophisticated system of construction that we deem as being sporadic, but is actually very, very formal. And in this avatar, we actually use the photograph as a means to also project the cities and the state's ambitions of infrastructure within our cities, and also bring that into the public realm. These are renderings that we did of the coastal road that was being that is being proposed in Bombay, where you actually will have these huge kind of motorways that will cut across the city's waterfront, and the impact that will have on our everyday experience of the city. This is work that we are doing with the Bandra Collective. I'm going to now show just one project, which is Jathan, a small Buddhist learning center that we did in rural Maharashtra. And while again, Edmund shot some beautiful images of this project, and he actually captured the kind of scale, the experience of the finished project, the tactility of the material, and so on and so forth. And also the kind of changing moods of the space. What these images don't capture is the narrative or the backstory or what lies behind the kind of the immaculate image. This, for instance, is a Swedish monk who's been coming to Sakarwadi and teaching kids meditation for the past 6 years, and it's really he who actually raised money for this project. The gentleman on the left is the owner, Sameep Somaya, who actually is the owner of the land where this project was built. And as you can see at the opening, he insisted that even though it was a Buddhist learning center, every single religion in that area found some representation, and it was actually a project for all. This is a picture of Supriya Rai, the lady in the middle, who was really the kind of rock on which this entire project was founded. She made sure that it got done the way that we imagined it would be. And this is a blank slide, I'm sorry about this. This is the site itself, completely inundated by trees, so much so that when Sameer realized that this site was so full of trees, he actually said that he'll give us another site to build on because he didn't want any trees to be cut. But we obviously worked through that. And our first scheme was actually drawn on site itself, where we tried to integrate the tree as a part of the architecture, so you don't really cut any trees, but you work around them always. And for some strange reason, there's another blank slide. But this is another very interesting picture which has our collaborators on the project, Hunarshala. This is Kiran Bhai Vagela from Hunarshala, who actually worked with us on the project. So it was a project that, 2.5, how much do I have? That's good. So this is, like I was saying, Kiran Bhai Vagela from Hunarshala, who actually worked with us on the project, and how there was on the left you see the master carpenter who actually helped us build the wooden trusses for the roof. How we were working with the community, but of course there were kids who were just coming in drawing on our drawings and having a lot more fun than our community discussions would be sometimes. And how our aspirations of, the reason why we actually got Hunarshala involved in this project was to build with rammed earth, and how these aspirations were challenged the minute we actually did test samples and realized that the earth required a huge amount of cement for stabilization, and then the chance kind of encounter of finding stone dust, lots of it waste, in a quarry close by. And then the kind of experimentation of doing rammed stone dust walls, and here you can see the craftsmen doing that on the left, and people and Saloni from our studio doing it on the right there. And then the images of the project, it slowly starts to manifest. And really, it's these images that in some sense are also the more, how should I say, these are the ones that are closest to your heart as well, because these are aspects of the story that you wouldn't actually, that everybody wouldn't actually know. But at the same time, they make these connections with you in time, in memory, and in some sense, space as well. And again, the kind of associations that this project makes in terms of networks, places that we go to. This is Alhang, where we actually bought the wood recycled from old shipbreaking yards, the process of recycling, and the wonderful textures that seem to emerge from these supposedly industrial kind of landscapes. That wood then kind of converting into that roof structure. The underside of that roof structure being made out of waste gunny bags that are used to create mud rolls that are mixed with straw to reduce temperatures within the structure by almost 5 to 6 degrees. And it's these images of even the way that these things get stacked that create directions that one can actually explore in projects for the future. And how that actually sits on top, and that beautiful filtering of light, which obviously doesn't happen once you get Mangalore tiles on top, but it still talks about the potential projections of this articulation. And And here, where we were actually trying to build brick walls, Kiran Bhai actually showing the local brick masons how to do that, and how, sorry, did I skip something? And how to actually do recessed grooves, and how the contractor then finally gets it and is overjoyed, as you can see him behind there. And the actual the laying of the mud floor and the light that it catches when it's fresh, when it's wet and it's just laid in, and the way that it actually, and how cool it actually seems when you walk on it. The adjustments that you make in what is otherwise a very strict and very classical organizational system with 2 structural bays on these walls, where you actually adjust to allow for this tree to survive the project and the construction, and finally, and even details that seem to warrant change. So for instance, we had to trim that tree, but we couldn't trim any more because it would harm the tree. So we then stopped the wall, cantilevered the beam out, and supported the roof off of that. So all of this adjustment that seems to happen when you actually work on site. And I'm now going to end with just kind of correcting a little lie I said in the beginning. There is a little bit of hubris here. I'm going to end with 2 images. These 2 images are the only ones that I've actually ever sold. This is of the Kumbh Mela, where the gaze of the other, it's actually looking away from the Kumbh Mela and to look at the surroundings and this little boat that actually sits on this little island. And in this last image of Zaha Hadid's building in Rome, the Maxi Museum, and which, as you might already know, is a really strong formal project, but what actually happens in the space in between. And I think that's really what interests me a lot more about this ability for the photograph to manifest images that stay with you in space and time, not necessarily the most evocative, the most significant image of the project, but definitely the one that you actually associate the most with in memory. Thank you.